right, let's go live on Facebook. Okay. All right, we are live on Facebook. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us and tuning in to episode number 9 of the Blossoming into You series. The intention and the vision behind this show is to create a safe, supportive, and nurturing space for women across the globe to express themselves, to fully blossom mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, and sexually. And I bring amazing, amazing individuals all over the world to come on and to have beautiful, juicy, fun conversations. And with today's episode, I have with me Diana, all the way from the Netherlands. And we're going to talk about shadow work, what it looks like to love ourselves in the darkest moments, like embracing the good, bad, and the ugly, which is so funny. I had a Facebook Live and I talked about this exact topic this morning. And with that being said, I think it's very important for us to create space to talk about this in a culture that so emphasize like think positive, like focus on the good, and this is not talked enough. So with that being said, Diana, welcome to the show and thank you so much for being on here today.
Hi, Miko. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. And hello, beautiful audience. I'm so excited to talk about this topic because as you said, I think that it's not talked about enough, especially also in spiritual communities. I see a lot of the bypassing, like, oh, think pretty thoughts, and it just doesn't work like that. And I've noticed in my journey that actually. Thinking those pretty thoughts without actually feeling them only creates more disconnection and more pain. So I'm so excited to talk about this today with you.
Yeah, you're so absolutely right. And like we talked about this off camera before we went on live. I share with you like, a little bit about where I am at right now in my own journey. And I'm always like I'm a stand for full transparency and vulnerability with my audience always. Even though it may be sometimes ugly details that nobody wants to know. But I've been struggling lately, like for the past weeks, terrible like skin eczema flare-ups on my skin. And I know deep down, like on a spiritual level, this is a lot of stuff purging like out of my body that it's showing in the physical body. But it sucked. Like it absolutely sucked. And like I hated it. I felt just terrible all day, every day. But then like I realized this is coming up because I made an intention to meeting God, like whatever that looks like for our audience, right? The divine, the creator, meeting the higher realm. And it wasn't just all like orgasmic pleasure and bliss and fulfillment and joy, but it's also meeting all of it, the good, bad, and the ugly. And that's why I feel like life has created these opportunities for me to learn how to unconditionally love myself even in those moments. So tell us more about, give us a context of what exactly this shadow work means. And give us an example if you would like on how you have incorporated that in your own journey.
Yeah, um, I think shadow work means a little bit different things to everybody, but what it means to me, it is that I really sit with everything that comes my way. So basically, also the parts of myself that I think that they will never be lovable. Nobody would like to look at them. I think they're maybe needy, maybe, not so positive things that in our, for instance, I don't know. I noticed that having needs in our society is actually taboo. So
Mm,
actually going there and looking also at the anxiety, I've been struggling with anxiety for a long time. And for me, when I started to look at the anxiety with the eyes of, hey, what are you here to tell me? I'm here to listen to you. What are you trying to open my eyes to? That completely changed my world, literally, like because every physical sensation is it's like a signal from your body, like, hey, something's happening, let's look at it. And we're
mhm,
really taught to like kind of like shove it aside and not look at it because it's shameful, because it's painful, because it's not good. And then you create more disconnection, more pain, more suffering. So what it looks like for me is that if I feel down a certain day, instead of putting on Netflix
Mhm.
and eating some ice cream and probably scrolling on my phone for 30 minutes or 2 hours. I actually really just put everything aside and like I pay attention to the sensation.
Mhm.
I really sit with it, and you'll be really surprised how it really transforms from one moment to another, and it can really give you information.
Yeah, there's like same exact work that I've supported my people that coach and myself with, like when these eczemas flared up, I really had to sit with it and no longer like keep resisting it, fighting it, hating it, thinking of solutions, how can I get rid of it, but just simply being present to what is trying to tell me. Like, okay, I'm
Mhm.
here. I have to surrender. There's nothing else I can do, and just meeting it with full surrender, unconditional like love, just listening. I'm here to listen. What do you what do you have to say to me? And I think this idea of like avoiding what's coming up, not being open to sitting with the shadow parts of ourselves, can also show up as busy work, like this incessant need or this desire to constantly even do personal development work, which I see in a lot of the women that I coach, that our drive, our ambition with personal development work, with growing a business, that can be a cover up for not being willing to sit with ourselves. Do you experience that as well, Diana?
Yes, totally. Yes. I think a lot of people start the self development work from a place of I hate myself and I want to fix myself. And that's okay. That's okay. If that's what takes you here, then I'm totally okay with that. But what what I learned, because that's also how I started. That's why I recognize it, and I have a lot of compassion for that part of myself and that part of people. Because nobody want to feel like shit. To be honest, nobody wants to. Nobody wants to, and then we think like something is wrong with us, and then we have to fix ourselves. We don't fit in, so we're gonna go and seek transformation. And that's fully okay. But if you have a good coach or a good mentor, a good guide, they will actually guide you towards feeling that just the way you are, everything is perfect. You are whole, you are perfect. And from that place, yes, we could look at those wounds. We could look at the traumas. We could look at all the things that are happening inside of us, but not from the place like I'm broken, I want to fix myself, but from the place of, hey, I've been through a lot. This is where I'm at now. I'm perfect anyways, and I know that. And I'm going to look at these things and I'm taking responsibility for them.
Mm. I think there's one thing that you just pointed out that's so important is to having that container of support from outside, outside resources. Sometimes we really just do need that. When we're in the middle of of these things brewing up in our bodies and our beingness and our energetic field, it,
Yeah.
it's like I like this analogy that I love to use. Like we are drowning in the ocean and we're trying to save ourselves at the same time. It doesn't work. It doesn't work, and it requires a level of humbleness and vulnerability and openness and courage to be like, hey, I would love some support. Can you help me? Can you support me? And leaning into that mentor, that coach, like it can really speed up or fast track trying to figure it out on our own, trying to save ourselves from the drowning waters.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally, totally. I can fully resonate with that. And, like asking for support, I hear it more and more out there. Like, we have to be independent, we own our own things, like your happiness, your responsibility. Yes, I do agree with all that, but then there's also the other side, because a lot of us tend to isolate ourselves and to think that nobody wants to deal with our stuff, nobody
Mhm.
wants to listen to us, nobody was ever in our position, and that just creates a lot of loneliness. And like, really, we are tribe animals, really. Like, biologically, we're evolved to be tribe animals, and it's totally normal to want support. You're not needy, you're not weird, it's just so normal. And I just want to encourage everybody to ask for support in one way or another from family and friends, or from a coach, from a therapist, from whatever feels right for them.
Yeah, I can speak on this myself too. Like it took a really long time for me to get to a place where I feel good enough, deserving enough, worthy enough to open up to receive support. And yes, it all comes down to the question of, do you believe you deserve that? Like, do you even believe you have, that you matter enough to speak up and be like, I would like to receive your support. And this
Yeah.
is so like, it happens in so many of us. This is such a core. I mean, to me, I feel like self-love is the pandemic that exists in our culture today, on top of COVID and everything. And it's like this whole idea to be willing to open up really comes down to us how much we feel that we deserve it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that I really resonate with that. And also how we learned as children. Um, because I think that the way our parents treated us when we were young, that's how we learn to treat ourselves. And
Mhm.
sometimes we, like, that's why I have so much compassion for everybody that's like not able to love themselves, not able to ask for the support, because it's not your fault. It's actually not. That's how you learn to love yourself. That's how you learn to show up for yourself or not.
Mhm.
So just knowing that there's another way out there, there's it takes time to build it, to ingrain it in your system that you are worthy, that you can ask for support. It really takes time, but that just knowing that there's another way out there can be really so supporting. And yeah, for me that
Mm.
was really a revelation to learn to love myself.
Yes, and this goes back in full circle, right? When you said it takes time for us to learn how to feel good enough that we're worthy, it comes down to being willing to do the shadow work. Even like, even by saying that I matter enough to make it safe for me to feel through all of the pain, all of the shadow parts of ourselves, like recognizing and acknowledging all parts of ourselves as divine expressions, right? As expression of the divine, or something that is sacred, something to be honored, something to be appreciated, versus something that we reject, that we don't accept, that we hate, or resist against. Like just voting yes to ourselves in that way builds up that level of like, I love me. I love me
Mm.
even though it's messy. I love me even though this freaking sucks. And that's a vote of confidence I see in building up that worthiness within.
Yeah, totally. And I think that these two words, loving myself, it's it can sound so cliche, like everybody says it and nobody really knows what it means. And the truth is it's probably different for everybody. But to me, the core of loving yourself is really showing up for yourself, like making the different choices, taking the responsibility to drop into the work that you have to do, to be there with yourself. And yeah, like you said, like to look at those parts that you think that are not lovable, they're not acceptable. And now coming back to that, so many of us think that those parts are not lovable because that's how we're taught. That's
Mm,
how we learn that they're not accepted in our society. So there's a lot of fear of rejection, of being left outside of the tribe, I guess, here, that we fear to go there because what if we find something disgusting and that nobody wants to look at? What if that's us? What is that our essence? At least that was for me, Like,
mm.
what if I really go deep inside myself and I see what I see is maybe just totally not lovable. So it's a very scary thing to do, especially because your mind plays a lot of tricks here.
Wow, yes. And this really speaks into this whole illusion that society and our culture has created and paint this picture of there's only one way. There's one perfect way. There's one right way to show up, to be who you are. But that's all just an illusion. When we deep down feel like there's a right way to do something or a right way to be who we are, that's when we feel the pressure. That's when we feel like, oh, maybe some parts of me is not okay, it's not acceptable. But seeing through those illusions give us a sense of freedom that can only be experienced from within. It's not freedom from money, freedom from security, whatever you want to name it, based on external circumstances. So I would love for us to really, Diana, like with your support together, to really anchor this topic, this conversation into why is this relevant? Like why is our listeners or anyone tuning in listening right now, like who cares? Like why do we get to do this work, right? Like especially now for a lot of us, maybe their priorities or the focus is on getting a job or making sure the next paycheck comes about, like getting security of, all of that. Why is this the more important work? So anchor that in, like where do you feel like this will go?
Well, to me, it's like, why not? Like, no, to me, it's such an important work. First of all, I believe that a lot of the things, the most outrageous things happening in this world, are because people have shut away parts of themselves, shadow parts that they never wanted to look at,
Mhm.
and that they take out, that frustration when you are fragmented and you shut away part of yourself. Maybe somebody told you you're, like even as children, like you're a bad student, you're a bad person, and that's something inside of you. It goes in deep back in your subconscious, and say, okay, if I'm a bad student, if I'm a bad person, I shall as well do bad things. I should hurt others. That's frustration is that is being created in your system by thinking subconsciously that you're a bad person or not lovable. You take it out on others.
Mhm.
So anger is such a good example of this. Like, anger on its own is really harmless. It's really a beautiful feeling that can really protect you, protect your loved ones, protect what you love the most. It can really give you a lot of information about what you're passionate about. But when you bring that into the shadow side, you're going to go out there and hit somebody, or you're going to go out there and commit a crime, So to me, shadow work is so important in our evolution as humans, because we can create containers. You can go and punch a pillow, nobody will get hurt, including not yourself. If you do this for 5 minutes, when you feel that anger, you're not going to go there out there and do something that harms another being. And that's one thing. And the other thing is that the moment you don't do shadow work, you shut down not only the pain and frustration, anger, and all the things that you don't want to feel, but you also shut down to pleasure. You cannot shut one down and not the other. They go hand in hand, because it's the
Mhm.
same system that suppress all this feeling. The system that suppress your sadness is the same system that suppresses your happiness. So if you want to feel more whole or more happy in your life, which I think most people want, then I really recommend you do the shadow work.
This is so good. Just loving like the synchronicities that are showing up with the flow of this conversation right now. Because like in this morning when I did my morning prayer and the journal that I've been journaling in the passage is that like feeling alive, like what it means to feel alive. We were given our senses, our heart, our emotions, not so that we can control it or to manage it, but to fully feel and come alive in our bodies, in our experiences here on this physical planet. And what we do in the 21st century, like we put ourselves in a bubble, like literally put ourselves in a bubble where we distract and numb ourselves with food, sex, like social media, busy work. But with numbness also comes with the loss of joy, right? With what you mentioned, like the experience of deep pleasure, ecstasy, orgasmic bliss, like all of that is the same senses that we use to not feel the pain. So when we liberate ourselves, creating that safe space to feel through the pain, then we create space for more beautiful stuff to come in and to be experienced. And that's to me, me, Diana, me and you were doing the same program together with Layla. And like I'm doing the program because I fully believe that the only way to live is a life of pleasure. And
Mm.
with that, unfortunately, yeah, you get to feel the pain as well, deeply. You get to feel
Yeah.
the pain deeply. Yeah.
Yeah, I really feel like the deeper you go in the pain and feeling the wounding that has been created to you by the environment where you grew up, by the caregiver, it doesn't really matter what has created this wounding. But if you go, the deeper you go into that wounding, the more you expand into pleasure. Like,
Mhm.
and also what a lot of people believe, especially in the beginning, and that including myself, is that shadow work is suffering. No, it can actually feel really fucking good to go and cry for 50 minutes in a row, and then you feel like, ah, it's so
Yes,
good.
I
It's
can
not
relate to that.
suffering. It's like it's really not suffering. If you don't put that mental judgment on it, that's what creates the suffering. But if
Mhm.
you really just connect with your body and you let your body do the work, like the felt sense, where that's what we're learning right now in our coaching certification, that okay, so sadness, what is sadness? It's not just, yeah, we call it sadness, but it's actually sensation in the body. How would it be if you could connect with that without the mental construct like, oh, I shouldn't be feeling this now, this is so bad, this is like, why am I feeling sadness now, I should feel happy. If you leave that aside and you really feel it in the body, how it is to feel sad, there's no suffering.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I touch on this today too on my Facebook Live, that most of, I mean, speaking from my experience, like most of my suffering and the most struggles that I experience in life is all of the meanings that my mind assigned to what's happening right now, versus simply receiving and meeting everything that comes my way with, it is what it is, like it just is, no attaching some backstory to it or projecting some worst case scenario in the future. Like that's all the mind's doing. It just assigns so much meaning. Like for example, if you didn't get if you didn't get a client today, and then that it is what it is, it just is. But then the mind will go into, oh, I sucked at this, I'm not good enough, my gifts it's not meant to go out there, I'm not gonna have enough to pay rent next month. Like it just goes down this crazy, insane, worst case scenario loop that creates all of the suffering. And it's so bizarre. Yeah.
Yeah, totally, totally. And I think that the thoughts that come with it are the first gateway that you can get into, okay, what's happening? Something's happening in my system. But it's so important that, okay, I acknowledge there are these thoughts, but what is actually underneath, right?
Mhm.
And yeah, I want to say something. I forgot what I want to say. Uh, okay, it will come later. Yeah, so yeah, it's like, oh, yes, I wanted to say, and that does not mean that you cannot mourn the fact that you didn't get the client. That
Mhm.
doesn't mean that you cannot feel disappointed that you didn't get the client.
Mhm.
But just taking the moment to feel that disappointment, feel that sadness, and then, not attaching the story next to it like, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough. There's the disappointment, and that's it.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and this is a muscle that we learn. It doesn't happen over time. I'm still learning it. And what works for me to create a space to feel through the disappointment without holding on to it, without making it like this is me, I'm disappointed, I'm a disappointment, like creating that detachment is what we've been learning with Layla, like in the program, where I really fully like tap into this essence, like embodying the queendom, right? The queen state where, okay, these emotions that's coming out, and I really literally see them as like a person in my body that wants to tell me something. And I'm just
Mm.
like holding this presence of groundedness and like power and confidence and like deep love for myself, and just witnessing this emotion as it comes up, this feeling of disappointment. I just let it say everything. Like, I hate this, I don't want, like, I'm disappointed, but then like detaching from it, it's what works for me.
Yeah, totally. And it's so funny because if a little child was in front of you and they were feeling all those feelings, most people wouldn't be like, "Okay, I'm gonna look at you later," or, "You know what, just go cry there because I want to watch some TV now." You know, most
But that's
people
what
wouldn't
we
do
do.
that.
but we
Yeah,
do that like in reality. Yeah.
yeah. And I think a lot of these parts that are disappointed and feel unworthy are also part of our inner child. So how
Mm-hmm.
would it be to look at our inner child with eyes of love, like to reparent ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is how would you have wanted to be nurtured by your mother, by your father? How would you have wanted to be in that position as a child and that your parents tend to your emotion? That's the same way, and you now you have the opportunity to actually love yourself the way you wish that you would have been loved by your parents, and to
Mm-hmm.
be the parent that you always wanted to have.
Yeah. Yeah. And Diana, as we are wrapping up, I do want us to land on a really like, empowering and not so much like, yes, even though it can be very challenging sometimes when I'm feeling all of the pain, sitting with that inner child, being present to what's coming up. But I would really like to speak into like the more we do this work, the more we purge these stuck emotions in us. I do deeply believe that more and more we will get to a place where it is more pleasure. And even though, and because the more we build this pleasure muscle in our beingness, the more we can hold a space that feels more okay when the pain comes up. So where I'm trying to go with this is that I do believe that at the end of this tunnel, it's like a bright light. It's not always gonna be like this up and down kind of like roller coaster ride. So can you speak into that? What do you feel? What's your outlook on this?
Yeah, definitely. I fully agree with that. Like, and I think that's also what a lot of people fear when they go into this work, that I'm always going to be in this space of anxiety. I'm always going to be in this space of feeling pain. I'm always no. So that's probably the initial thing that's going to happen, because if you haven't felt many things for a lot of years, then a
Mm-hmm.
lot of things do want to move. Then they do want you to look at them, and they want to be felt. But the more you move through this, the more you open yourself to pleasure, because you kind of clear those things. Like you have a wounding, you look at it enough, you build a different pathway, it's gone. And
Mm-hmm.
so when a situation that is similar to that comes at you, then you don't have that trigger anymore. Or maybe the trigger is still there, but it's way less intense, and you know how to deal with it. So totally, I I fully agree.
Mm. Yeah, I'm learning it too myself. I'm experiencing more and more of this every day, every moment. The more I can sit with my triggers, the more I can like be in full surrender to it, the more I'm able to feel so much more at ease, so much more feeling like the bigger picture versus so narrowed in like the pain point, the focus of my suffering. And every moment of every day I'm just experiencing like a broader, like I feel like I'm expanding and
Yeah.
just like being a space to allow everything to come in. So yeah, really like, anyone listening right now, if you're like resonating with what me and Diana are sharing, and you feel called like that, it's time for you to feel through what's in the shadows for you. Like really do take what we have talked about, like be open to receiving support, because at the beginning it can be very scary, it can be very uncertain, maybe you don't know how to navigate through this on your own. So really open, like it's an act of self-love to say yes, I get to have support and I get to invest in myself. So invest in you, get a coach, get a mentor, whoever speaks to you, and really let them hold your hand at the very beginning stages of your journey. And then you get to fly, you get to soar on your own. And but you at least have that tools like under your toolbox. So wrapping this up, Diana, I want to acknowledge you. Thank you for being a stand for what you do and the work that you do out there for people, and just being this loving presence of who you are. I'm so glad to be connected with you. I'm so glad that you came on to this show today to talk about such a powerful topic. Is there anything you would like to leave our audience off with as we close this?
Yeah, I would love to say one more thing. When you do the shadow work, don't forget to do the pleasure work as well, just to give
Yes.
your nervous system a break. And, like you can go into something really heavy, and then, maybe you feel on a scale from 1 to 10, you feel a 2. like just try to elevate your, like afterwards, put some music, do something that's super nourishing, and try to elevate even to a three. So
Mm,
it's so important to do both at the same time. And that's
I love it.
really, I would love to thank you so much and thank our audience. Thank you for having me here. And I loved every bit of it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I just love this conversation. It felt so like synergistic. I feel like we were just bouncing off of each other, feeding into each other. And I have no doubt that our audience also get to almost like plug into this energy socket and like get some of this like dad knows and it's powerful every time you guys do tune in, you ladies, you beautiful beings tune in like to listening to something like this that feeds your soul, you are really like recharging into something that really gives you life. So I want to acknowledge everyone for tuning in and saying yes to yourself. And if you would like for a chance to be featured on my show and be a guest like what Diana has the honor to be today, I would love to have you and we get to talk about anything that speaks to your heart, that maybe you never felt you had the space to share. So there's going to be a link for you to apply somewhere, where you found this video. And until then, have an amazing day, everyone. Sending so much love your way. And see you soon. Bye.
Bye.